Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm just fresh back from doing a major presentation at the um, Mindfulness Expo in the Anaheim Civic Auditorium. That's the biggest venue I've ever seen. That was where I did a huge venue with Louise Hay way back in the day when I first had met her, and we did 11 soundtracks together called Subliminal Self Mastery. That's where I met all the luminaries that circled around Louise, Deepak Chopra and Barbara Marx Hubbard and Brew Joy and Wayne Dwyer and all those people I got to know. It's also the venue that had the National Booksellers Association convention way, way back in 1989. That's the biggest booksellers convention that happens in the country. And the venue is so large that you can't possibly walk it in one day. It takes 4 days. It's huge, gigantic, on many levels, many floors. I didn't have a booth. I had a backpack with some of my CDs in it, looking for connections and business. And way back on the second day, and the furthest corner, way back in nowhere land, was a booth, the relaxation company, and I thought this looks like a good venue for me. Relaxation, that's what I do. I talked with the owner, and I said, "This is great. I mean, there's a whole thing of relaxation, but you don't have any soundtracks there with brainwave entrainment." And he said, "Well, I haven't found anybody who I thought knew what they were talking about." So we did this whole thing that forged a very profitable business relationship over the years. Uh, that was my ticket to mainstream, where I was in all the stores in the country, in 60 countries. I had my own bin card with CDs, and yeah, it was an incredible period of time. So it was an interesting experience being back to the Anaheim Civic Auditorium to do this venue, the second one I've done for the Mindfulness Expo, where we discussed the science of mindfulness. And perhaps I'll turn that into a broadcast here, because the concept of mindfulness is very close to what I've discussed before, where we break meditation out of a meditation room where I'm sitting with my eyes closed. We break it out of that room and we put it into our regular life. Our life itself is the meditation room, and everything you do in your life becomes the possibility of your meditation exercise. Similar to Every Minute Zen, or Meditation in Action from Trungpa Rinpoche, or Gurdjieff's Work on Yourself. You're here in your life doing your thing. Chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Anyway, so welcome to another No Small Talk Sunday with me, your faithful servant, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. And today is is no exception. But there's no small talk until we start talking about things that are the smallest of the small. And then I guess you could call that cosmic small talk. We're talking about, subatomic levels and quantum field levels and Planck length levels, the smallest of the smallest of the smallest measurement you can possibly make. That's small talk, but it's big small talk. Or perhaps it's small talk with a capital S. So, so today we're talking about what we call the Schwartzchild Radius. And, you already knew you were in trouble as soon as you saw the title of this one. What the heck is the Schwartzchild Radius? And it would be interesting to find out how many people that are tuning in today even knew what the Schwartzchild Radius was when they read the title of this show. I'd be interested to know. But the Schwarzschild radius has to do with black holes, and it's the radius from the center of a black hole out to its event horizon that I'm sure everybody has heard of. The singularity is the central point where gravity, gets so intense that it crushes everything, including light. Nothing can get out of it once it gets beyond the event horizon. Once you cross this zone, there's no going back. So there's something about this event horizon that is of extreme importance. And the location of the event horizon, determined mathematically, was a certain mathematical formula that was a radius from the singularity point. And that's the Schwarzschild radius, which locates the event horizon. Very important stuff, because it changed all of physics. Once we had a working understanding of black hole physics, then all kinds of things spun from that. So, the work of this man, Karl Schwartzchild, really set the physics world on fire, because he opened up the whole world of understanding of black hole physics. And it's just gotten weirder and crazier since then, as new discoveries are happening every year about black hole physics. So his original calculations that were setting the stage for understanding black holes, and the Schwarzschild radius that showed where the event horizon is, led to the mathematics of what happens in the event horizon, what happens inside a black hole, and what happens just outside this radius of the event horizon. What's life like in that zone? Here's a little definition. The Schwarzschild radius is the radius of the event horizon within which nothing can escape the black hole, including light. It was determined by Karl Schwartzchild using Einstein's general theory of relativity, and completely depends on the mass of the black hole, where g is the universal gravitational constant and c is the speed of light. So it doesn't matter that you know or understand what's going on here. The point is that it has to do with the gravitational force and the speed of light, where light can't leave the event horizon. Once it crosses over that, then even light can't go fast enough to reach the edge and escape. The force of gravity is pulling it too hard. All of this led to more and more of a coherent anatomy of a black hole, where gravity compresses so hard it forms a singularity where the laws of our universe cease to exist. So that was one of the central points that Einstein was struggling with, is this concept that if gravity was strong enough in a certain region, then the laws of the universe as we know it couldn't function there anymore, and it would appear to just be a zone of nothingness where no laws apply that we recognize. What's on the other side of that black hole, what's inside that black hole, could conceivably be a universe that's inside out, where nothing can go slower than the speed of light. Um, and that's the realm of, the physics of scalar waves and strange phenomenon like that. Scalar waves, which cannot go slower than the speed of light, that their lowest speed is the speed of light, and then it takes on from there. So everything is inside out and backwards. It could be the doorway to mirror universes where our universe is reproduced there, like in a mirror, like in Alice in Wonderland, where everything you look at in the mirror is you and everything you recognize, but backwards. And it may be that time flows backwards there instead of forwards. Be that as it may, nobody really knows what's going on once you pass the singularity. We know a lot of what's going on in everything at this side of the singularity. And this is the Schwartzchild radius here, the event horizon. And then there's another zone called the ergosphere, this area here, where all kinds of weirdo physics takes place. And then there's another, the ergosphere radius that's here, where the normal physics of our world from this boundary out obeys the laws that we recognize. When you cross this zone, then the laws that we recognize get completely strange and completely weird. When you get to this zone, there's a border here where that is a place of its own. You haven't crossed over the event horizon, so you're still here in this universe, but not quite, because you're in some strange place that's like the transition zone between one and the next. The ergosphere that most of us have not heard of in black hole physics. The ergosphere is a region outside the event horizon of a rotating black hole, where the gravitational effects of the black hole are so profound that they begin to drag space-time along with them. This dragging of space-time is a result of the frame dragging effect predicted by the Kerr metric, which is another physicist who did the math of that region. The shape of the ergosphere is oblate. It's an oblong shape, not round. It's flattened at the poles and extended at the equator, owing to the rotation of the black hole. The outer boundary of the ergosphere is known as the static limit, beyond which it is impossible for any object to remain stationary relative to distant observers. Once within the ergosphere, an object is inevitably forced to rotate along with the black hole. So that means that when you cross this little boundary, you start getting whipped around in space-time by the rotation of the black hole singularity. It's rotating, and all of this is rotating. And the event horizon is rotating, and it's rotating this zone here like a tornado. And once you go in there, you're spinning around, but you're spinning around in space-time. Space-time itself is in motion. So you're stretched and torqued and, I would assume torn asunder. Not a happy place. And time does weird things. Once you start getting close to a black hole zone, time begins to distort more and more and more the closer you get. So once you cross over this ergosphere, from an outside observer, you may get stretched and pulled and whipped around and torn to pieces from their standpoint, but from your standpoint, time wouldn't play the same way for you. Things would be weird, but you wouldn't be torn asunder for another millennia. it would be a slow motion thing that's outside of time and space as we normally think of it, out in sort of this zone. But this whole mystery of the boundary here of the Schwartzchild radius, the event horizon, where you go into the depths of the black hole to the singularity, and this zone that's right around here, which is that ergosphere zone. And you can see its boundary is out here someplace, like it's a little fuzzy, but this is the boundary out here of the ergosphere. And so once you cross over this boundary and you get into this zone, you're being whipped around and torn to pieces, and all kinds of weird, happy things are happening to you. This boundary is another one where you're in a twilight zone state where things are weird. Einstein's view of black hole physics, where he postulated the white holes, where there's a black hole here sucking things in and crushing them down and having them explode because they're crushed so fast. And the explosion is sucked through a wormhole and exits out in a white hole with the explosion. Now, I had mentioned something about this before, where the explosion would be looking like a star, except the version that I was talking about is where it would be sucked down through here and then exploded out down here, and the boundary across would be the fabric of the universe, where the white hole would be in an alternate universe and not in this one. So there'd be kind of a partition between our universe and an alternate universe, where black holes in our universe would suck things down, squeeze them so hard they would explode, and the explosion would pop through in an alternate universe parallel to us and look like a star. It would be the matter being pushed out. The explosion would be pushed out. Now, the Schwarzschild proton, this is an article that got published in a peer-reviewed journal by Nassim Haramein. So if you haven't heard of Nassim Haramein, you should probably look him up. He's a physicist not aligned with any university. He's formed his own, the Resonance Project Foundation, that's been funded by billionaires. His mathematical viewpoints and solutions to redoing the math of our universe is pretty astounding stuff. Of course, the sort of the peer-reviewed world of physicists hate this guy, think he's a quack, and try to brush him off. But his new physics are pretty mind-blowing, and they have been showing themselves to stand up to the scrutiny of other physicists. So just here, we review our model of the proton in the nucleus of the atoms themselves, right? Protons and neutrons in the nucleus of an atom. So review of the model of the proton that obeys the Schwarzschild condition. We find that only a very small percentage of the vacuum fluctuations available within a proton volume need to be cohered and converted to mass energy in order for the proton to meet the Schwarzschild condition. What he's talking about here is he's proposing that the protons in the nucleus of all the atoms in your body and in the universe are actually black holes, many black holes. And he's proving it mathematically by applying the Schwarzschild radius mathematical calculations to the proton and seeing that it now explains a whole bunch of different things in atomic physics that were always a mystery, and the math didn't add up. So this is a little dense here, and it's going to be pretty hard to understand because he talks even more highfalutin than I do. But the concept here of the math, of recalculating how the universe is put together, with some astounding conclusions, particularly conclusions about 0 point energy structures in the universe, and the nature of the quantum field, and the nature of the quantum foam, and the fact that there are black holes everywhere. That black holes are much more of a regular part of our world than we've given it credit for. Instead of an odd and weird phenomenon someplace out there in the universe where there's some black hole that sucks things in, physics in general over the last decade or so have been more and more finding more black holes, more black hole interactions, finally recognizing and putting it out there that the center of galaxies and our galaxy is a supermassive black hole, so that the whole spin of our galaxy is all of the matter and all of the solar systems and all the star systems and planets in our galaxy are spinning around and being sucked down a giant black hole. It's all in slow motion, but when you look out in the universe and you see these pinwheel galaxies out there, the center of that galaxy is this big glowing mass, and that is all circling around a black hole that is compressing whole star systems and whole solar systems, compressing them into a space that's so small that they all explode. So around the center of a galaxy is this big glowing mass, which is the explosion of hundreds of millions of stars all blowing up at the same time and being sucked down a black hole. This is ordinary reality, folks. Welcome to our galaxy, right? But what he's proposing is something even more astounding than that. When he published his paper, the Schwartzchild Radius, the Schwarzschild proton, and publishing that in a peer-reviewed journal where they couldn't really shoot holes in his math. They didn't like it at all because he's not one of the club. But the concept that the center of every atom in your body is a mini black hole is pretty profound. And working out the math of the Schwarzschild radius for a proton and having it work out, and all of a sudden it starts to explain the weak force and the strong force and all of that stuff, is pretty mind-blowing. I mean, the implications are that every atom that makes every neuron in your brain who's listening to me right now is a black hole, and your whole body is filled with untold trillions of black holes. It's like, what? Yeah, like reality is stranger than fiction. But just as a review, the nucleus of an atom is protons and neutrons. He's talking about the protons being black holes, and out here is the electrons spinning around. And if the proton is a black hole, it explains all this spin, why there's a spin, why there's an electron cloud circling around the nucleus. Why does the nucleus hold together? What's holding it together, which normally is called the strong force. He's saying the strong force is, the force of gravity, mini gravity, sucking things down a black hole. So now we've got a new definition of the proton. Not being a thing. It's a black hole with all kinds of mathematical resonance relationships. like harmonics and overtones that spin out, that form the components that we see inside a proton. So we're redefining what a proton even looks like, or even what it is. The confinement force that protons experience in the nucleus of an atom, the so-called strong force, or the strong interaction, is equivalent to the energy of the gravitational force that two protons would experience if there were many black holes attracting each other. So what he's saying is, when you do the mathematical calculations of the Schwartzchild radius from the singularity at the center of a proton, and you calculate the event horizon, which defines the proton itself that you thought was a thing, the attractive force of that little mini black hole pulling things into it is exactly what you would predict it to be if it was a black hole, versus, as is currently described, as the strong force. Now, the strong force calculates how strong that force is to pull things into the nucleus and have the electron cloud spinning around it. And it turns out that his Schwarzschild proton calculations equal exactly and redefine what the strong force is. So if we go back to the four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong force which holds the nucleus together. He's talking about this force right here, a mystery force that nobody knows where it's coming from. He's explaining it's coming from a singularity in the center of the proton. By the way, the weak force governs unstable atoms and radioactive decay. Even the extremely small radius of an atom still contains some 99.9999% space, which is true. That's no news to anybody, but the universe isn't empty, it's filled with quantum foam. You remember this one? I did a whole live stream on quantum foam. What is quantum foam? It's the proof that even at the smallest scale, empty space is alive with energy. A boiling nexus of sort of quantum bubbles in a foam popping in and out of existence in a highly super energetic state. You might remember this picture from that broadcast, quantum foam. So it means that the vacuum of space is not empty at all. It's the smaller you get into looking at the vacuum of space of what appears to be empty, it's not empty. It's a boiling sea of highly energetic sort of bubbles popping in and out of existence. Many universes could be constantly exploding at every point in space. Exploding because that's what happens when a black hole compresses the matter around it and sucks it down. It compresses it so profoundly that it just blows up. And then it sucks the explosion down. This was also a slide from that previous broadcast. Many universes could be constantly exploding at every point in space, and at every point in your body, and in every atom of your body. A redefining of the nature of the proton itself inside every atom of your body and the universe. Now, Nassim has done all these exotic calculations of the exact nature of the proton. So here's the proton. And the math only works out if the proton is composed of these mathematical structures in 3D, a 3D version of these flower of life. The flower of life kind of mathematics that we've seen reproduced throughout the world, this pattern in ancient structures and ancient monuments that the structure of the proton as a black hole has a structure that's mathematically related to ancient mathematics that are displayed in ancient East Egypt and China and Mesopotamia. It's like the discrete values plus black hole, not only one sphere, but a multitude of Planck spheres are called PSU, Planck spheres, which contain information. Now, a Planck is, after Max Planck, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who defined the smallest measurement that could possibly be, the Planck length. So when you zoom down and go past all the stuff, all the atoms and all the protons and all the quarks and the charms and the hadrons and leptons and the Z particles, and you get down to the nub of the quantum foam at the basis of the quantum field, the smallest thing that you could possibly measure is the Planck length, defined by Max Planck. So he's referring to Planck spheres, the smallest sphere that could possibly exist, which contains information. The equatorial surfaces of these spheres line the surface of a black hole according to the flower of life pattern. And this is that flower of life pattern, except here it's in 3D. These spheres are forming a 3D version of the 2D flower of life geometries. There are 10 to the 60 PSU, or Planck spheres, inside of a proton. Now, think about it. Nassim has calculated exactly how many of these spheres you could contain inside of a proton, because he can calculate the radius, the Schwartzchild proton radius, and all of the math falls into place from there. There are 10 to the 60 PSU Planck spheres inside of a proton and 10 to the 40 on its surface, which corresponds to the event horizon of a proton black hole. Like I said, welcome to No Small Talk Sunday, but here we are, talking small. Finally, Nassim Haramein considers gravity as a ratio between the amount of information contained in the volume of a black hole and the amount of information expressed on its surface. Using this simple geometric ratio, he can calculate the gravitational field of any object in the universe, from the smallest to the largest black hole, including a proton. And what this is implying, once you see that the Schwartzchild radius, from the singularity radius out to its event horizon, is a standard, and it applies to the physics of any black hole or any size black hole at any location, then it means the basic physics that describe a supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy and a micro-miniaturized black hole in the proton of every atom in your body, the physics and the mathematics is exactly the same. And the forces that are applied in a massive black hole sucking things in and a micro-miniature black hole sucking things in, both of those define what could be looked upon as gravity. That is a redefining of gravity. And gravity of the major four forces of the universe, right? Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong force, the weak force. Gravity has been the one thing that is the big mystery, the one thing that doesn't fit into the math, the one thing that blocks Einstein's dream of a unified field theory that would explain everything. And Nassim Haramein is saying that he's found the answer of that gravity itself is not its own thing. It's a ratio. Gravity is a ratio between the amount of information contained in the volume of a black hole and the amount of information expressed on its surface. And the amount in a black hole is defined as 10 to the 60 Planck spheres. inside the black hole, and each of them contains information. And the 10 to the 40 Planck spheres on the surface also contain information, and the ratio between 10 to the 60 on the inside and 10 to the 40 on the outside forms what we define as gravity. So this is like atomic scale gravity. Actually, this is quantum gravity. And out in the big world is macro gravity. And it's that relationship between macro gravity that we see in sort of the Newtonian world. And that gravity completely breaks down once you hit the wall of the periodic table. And on the other side of that is the quantum world, where gravity just doesn't seem to have a place, and nobody could figure out how to reconcile that. And that's what this particular Schwartzchild Radius document that Nassim Haramein published is explaining. The resolution of the mathematical problem of gravity at all scales. That gravity can be at any scale, quantum scale to massive super black hole scale, and the math continues to hold up. And it gives now a key mathematical solution to some of the biggest problems in physics and quantum physics, where they reconcile together, and once again they become fractal holographic projections of each other. Once again, confirming what I keep hammering on is the fractal holographic nature of the universe, where everything is reflected infinitely into everything else at all time scales and at all size scales and at all speed scales. Everything emerges from and returns to a fundamental field of information that connects all of us. So information is the big deal he's talking about inside the Schwarzschild radius, that a black hole is information in one state, and on the outside of the black hole is information in another state. And the relationship of what's inside of a black hole and on the surface of a black hole, that relationship forms a pattern of relationships of information to itself in the Newtonian world and the quantum world. That the wall of the periodic table is the interface of a language of information in a macro and a micro scale that is combined together through somehow information inside or at the surface of a black hole. The Schwarzschild radius showing the event horizon is a key to all of this. The event horizon is the translator device. It's its own kind of a wall. Black hole, proton, and flower of life, a holographic link. Here, this square, this purple square, is the cosmological scale, like supermassive black holes, where the radius, the Schwarzschild radius of a black hole is defined by certain mathematical gradients. The holographic solution and the Schwarzschild solution to Einstein's equations give the same result for the calculation of mass, so that holds together. R, the number of Planck spheres oscillating in the volume of a black hole on the inside. Over here, in the quantum scale, N is the number of Planck equatorial surfaces on the surface of a black hole. So remember, this was 10 to the 60 and 10 to the 40, and the relation between these two is a mathematical calculation right here that explains macro and micro scales finally reconciling themselves together. What is a proton? Proton is an agglomeration of electromagnetic fluctuations of the quantum vacuum spinning in a region of space. It's a microscopic black hole. The proton is continuously powered by vacuum. by the quantum foam. That is why it has been spinning for billions of years without apparent energy input. So this is deep stuff, particularly for anybody who's, I guess, acquainted enough with the math. Now, I'm no big mathematician. I have to really stretch my mind around these concepts. I'm good at understanding the basic big picture concept that is trying to communicate. I'm bad at understanding how to do the math or interpret the mathematical formulas. When there's an explanation next to it like this, I can grok it. I got to stretch, but I can grok the idea. You know, the information, the standard proton, the information contained inside the proton is restricted by its surface area, the Schwartzchild proton radius. Thus, only a small percentage of the information is converted to mass. This represents the standard mass. The observer is taken as a frame of reference for this calculation, which brings us back to relativity. It's the observer that's watching that defines all the frames of sort of reference. At the core of it all, in the Schwarzschild radius of the proton, this is what the proton looks like. It's a black hole exchanging information of a huge number of spheres packed together, where some of those spheres form the surface and some of them form all the stuff on the inside. And the relationship between those two exchanges a certain type of information. And what is the information that they're exchanging that bleeds off out into this big world and forms the basic pattern that all of this is? It forms everything that we know. Very similar to Rupert Sheldrake's idea of the morphic field, that the black hole is the repository of the basic information of the blueprints for everything. So it's the backup hard drive. It's the basic holographic blueprint for everything. And only stray little parts spin out from into this world and make this world. The majority is contained. And it's not just contained in massive black holes, it's contained in the proton of every atom in your body. It's bleeding out information to form the pattern that creates everything in the universe that we see. The stuff that's around me is all created from this information processing that sort of leaks by osmosis out of all the little black holes that make up everything. I mean, everything in this room is made of atoms, and every atom that makes up all the stuff in this room are little tiny black holes. That's pretty mind-blowing. And all those black holes are actually spheres packed together, spheres of information. And this flower of life design, this thing here, it can be found all around the globe: Scotland, Ireland, China, Turkey, Egypt, India, Germany, Bulgaria, Sweden, France, Czechoslovakia, Greece, and at least 14 other places. I mean, look at these designs. These are thousands of years old. The people who were putting these things out here were trying to communicate to us in future generations a mathematical idea that was of extreme importance, extreme cosmic importance. And it was brought to us, in the present world by this guy, Drunvalo Melchizedek, who wrote this book called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. This flower of life symbol was really brought to everybody's attention through this one guy, Drunvalo Melchizedek. That's why he's so famous. The flower of life thing sort of issued forth through him and reminded us all of an ancient mathematical secret that had been lost, and started to point out that the ancients applied this pattern and these three-dimensional patterns in all kinds of architectural works and temple works and things like that, to communicate to the future that there was something important about this, secret of the universe. That's Drunvalo right there with me, and that's where I was this last Sunday, and why I missed my broadcast. I was in Sedona, meeting with old friends of mine who are friends of Drunvalo, and this is how I got to meet him for the first time. Him and his wife, beautiful people, his daughter, beautiful person. So this concept of the Planck mass, Nassim Haramehn's idea of the smallest of the small, and when you follow the Schwartzchild proton calculations and the Schwartzchild radius of a black hole, you see this mathematical line that connects straight through everything and seems to line up and explain all the phenomenon in the microscopic world and the macroscopic world on based on one mathematical formula, which is the radius of the singularity to its event horizon, the Schwarzschild radius. Extremely important mathematical concept that explains pretty much everything. Is the universe part of a larger mind? Yes, of course it is. We've talked about this before, but we've got mathematical scaffolding that supports this idea now in the Schwarzschild radius. The fact that everything is scalable. Black holes and the Schwarzschild radius explains a lot. It's all got to do with information. The information is the structural diagram of all of this, and that structural diagram reiterates a central theme that is applied in the universe at all scales, the most extremely small scales that you could imagine to the largest scales that could ever be, and all the steps in between. That's you and me and our construction that stands midway between the smallest of the small and the largest of the law. Right in the middle of that infinite mix is you and me in the center, exemplifying all those same laws. As above, so below. We are made in, quote, his image. The only reason it's his is because it was, male deacons of churches. But the implications here is that all these grand designs of biology and physiology and ecology and living sciences and the mathematics that governs planetary systems and, massive scale intergalactic relationships, all of it is of the same stuff. Same math explains it all. All of it is reiterations on a central theme that is scalable in time and in space and in distance and in speed, where everything underlying looks like each other. It's all reiterations in a sort of a fractal hologram. A recent study examines evidence for the scale-free nature of consciousness itself, in which toroidal geometry, toroids are spinning kind of donuts in advanced math, like the well-known double torus, can model consciousness at all fractal levels of the universe and how it comes together in the human cognition system as a holographic workspace within the brain, a brain event horizon. Now, what this is pointing out is that funny boundary of the Schwarzschild radius and the event horizon where things get funky, where that either on this side and you're still part of this, or you're on the other side and you're in the black hole. But there's a transition zone where you're in both at the same time, but neither one. And according to this, that's the brain's event horizon, and that is where consciousness creates all of this reality. That one has a potential to be, and the other is collapsed into something through consciousness itself. I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative of consciousness. Max Planck, here's the guy who made the Planck length and won a Nobel Prize for it. You know, all these sort of quantum physicists who won Nobel Prizes, all of them make statements like this. They're very mystical. When these guys are doing the math that shows that the core nature of reality is so mind-blowing and profound and so far beyond, they have sort of their own mini spiritual enlightenment experiences and come away with that profoundly changed. They're like mathematical spiritual adventurers interrogating reality itself to have it give up its secrets. Looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking inside a radio for the announcer. A new study examines how consciousness in the universe is scale invariant and implies an event horizon of the human brain. Fractalized, holographic, based on relationship mathematics between the spheres that form inside a black hole versus the spheres on its surface as a ratio. Things coming from nothing. Einstein, the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend personal God and avoid dogma and theology. Covering both the natural and the spiritual, it should be based on a religious sense arising from the experience of all things natural and spiritual as a meaningful unity. The natural world expresses the most profound spiritual truths, and they're related to each other mathematically. And the core mathematics seems to be the same mathematics that we see in music theory. Edwin Schrödinger, the total number of minds in the universe is one. In fact, consciousness is a singularity phasing within all beings. All these guys were like having mathematical moments of enlightenment. New physics theory claims to solve the mystery of consciousness. When we understand that consciousness is a physical, relativistic phenomenon, its mystery naturally dissolves. So, you know, what that's saying is, and so what a few of these past slides have been showing is that some of the major figures in quantum physics, Nobel Prize winning physicists, are talking about the fact that consciousness itself is an event horizon phenomenon, that from the nothingness inside of a black hole that contains information that's mathematically packed together in sort of spherical flower of life mathematics, and the spherical nature of that same flower of life mathematics at the surface of the black hole, the event horizon, is where consciousness arises, where consciousness is the conversion interface between the stored information inside of the black holes that exist every place in the universe, in every time scale and every size scale, and outside the event horizon. So we are the consciousness is the translator that translates basic information patterns stored in the archive into execution of those patterns, those blueprints, into a reality framework that gets expressed. One is a potential, and the other is an actualization of that potential. Very similar to Schrödinger's cat paradox, where inside this black hole is the potential for all things. It's an infinite field stretching infinitely off into the distance of every possibility that could ever be, every blueprint and every pattern that ever could have been made in the past or the future in the mind of God. And the interface at the event horizon, according to the Schwartzchild Radius, is where consciousness takes those blueprints and manifests them in reality by observing which blueprint gets manifested. Reality is created by consciousness must arrive on the scene for reality to exist. Reality is a potential of anything to exist until consciousness arrives and collapses that potentiality into an actuality. And all of these great masters of physics are saying the same thing, that it's an event horizon phenomenon in consciousness. That's where this all happens. And the event horizon is everywhere, in the infinitely small and the infinitely large, that the entire universe is packed with black hole information in potential form and being executed into physical form by consciousness itself as the interface. Network theory sheds new light on origins of consciousness. Where is your brain? Where in your brain do you exist? Is your awareness of the world around you and of yourself as an individual the result of specific, focused changes in your brain? Or does that awareness come from a broad network of neural activity? How does your brain produce awareness? So more and more research has been showing that it's a network. And the network in the brain where consciousness appears to arrive is not a network that's in your brain at all. It's a network that's in the universe. And your brain simultaneously exhibits physical changes as consciousness plays itself through that instrument, so to speak. According to this guy, a physicist from Israel, this is quite a mystery, since it seems that our conscious experience cannot arise from the brain, in fact, cannot arise from any physical process. As strange as it sounds, the conscious experience in our brain cannot be found or reduced to some neural activity. Think about it this way. A philosopher from Dr. Zakira Nemeh, a philosopher from the University of Memphis. When I feel happiness, my brain will create a distinctive pattern of complex neural activity. This neural activity will perfectly correlate with my conscious feeling of happiness, but it is not my actual feeling. It is just a neural pattern that represents my happiness. That's why a scientist looking at my brain and seeing this pattern should ask me what I feel, because the pattern is not the feeling itself, just a representation of it. As a result, we can't reduce the conscious experience of what we sense, feel, and think to any brain activity. We can just find correlations to these experiences. The brain is a display board. It simultaneously expresses what consciousness is putting forth. It's not that consciousness is a byproduct of neural activity, which the Newtonian field of science and medicine has always expounded as their model of what they think consciousness is. Consciousness is some kind of funny stray byproduct of electrical activity of neurons firing in your brain. It's not a central factor of the universe. And further than that, the brain itself is an expression of consciousness, of the interpretation of consciousness of the information contained inside of the black holes in all of the atoms that make up the neurons. And those neurons are in a universally sized brain that we all share at the deepest collective unconscious level. All of us individuals could be looked upon as brain neurons in a larger brain. Consciousness as holographic, quantized dimension mechanics. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Our relationship to the universe at large is a place where we stand precisely and exactly in the middle of the infinitely small versus the infinitely large. If you have an infinite universe that never started and will never stop, an eternal, infinite space, where on one side of us is the infinitely large, as big as you can possibly get, and at the other side of us is infinitely small as you could ever think of going, that assures that the middle spot between those two is always you and me. We always arrive exactly in the middle of infinitely larger than us and infinitely smaller than us, then we are eternally in the middle of that. We are the interface, the translation, the exemplification of fractal holographic pattern. A pattern that reiterates everywhere. Infinitely small, infinitely large, in all possible time scales, in every kind of way that you could think of or imagine. All of it is related to each other as sort of mathematical brothers and sisters, deeply integrated together. Form that stretches through all time and space, to all kinds of small and large, to all kinds of possible imaginations of what things could be. The universe is a godlike exploration of every possibility. The universe wants it all. It wants every story. It wants every possible experience. And since time is an illusion, it's going about that business through all of us. And here we are. When we take all the nodes of all of us and we put ourselves together, there's power in numbers that we can access this field if we align ourselves together properly. And that is the grand experiment of these live streams, the idea of a global mind link connection between an unconscious, collective unconscious mind that taps into the larger universal holographic mind that we're all part of to co-create reality on a new concept of what the kind of reality we want to experience might be. If we're not happy with the one we got, let's change it. That's the idea. Let's change it. And all we got to do that is put headphones on. So, headphones, and here we go. come back. So I'm going to leave this going for a while for the chat communications among everyone. Once again, it's my great honor and privilege to be here with you all. Thank you all for following through and keeping this going. Refer other people. Put it out there on social media. The more the better. Thank you all very much. I will see you next Sunday, and I'm going to keep this going for a little while. Thank you.